Yeah, another Do Not God video production. Okay, yeah. Yeah, okay, that's the intro for now. Yeah, that's it. Okay, sucks. Anyway, so there's this video, a discussion on antinatalism. Is life worth beginning? Really good. Generally speaking, positive feedback, 22,000 views. Comments are pretty much positive. So yeah, smart people seemed able to have a conversation about the nature of life being something other than some perfectly perfect, beautiful thing that is just quite obviously worth it. That it's a question, and the very fact that it's an open question means that anybody who's going to do it has some obligation to defend their doing it, because it's aggressive and it's expensive, and it will implicate you in consequences that may be well out of your control. And that's all kind of serious. Yeah, it's not a gift. So the atheists are starting to get that part. Okay, that you can't talk about life like it's some sort of obvious or apparent or intrinsically purposeful and functional thing. All right, so that's good. Yeah. So anyway, so in this part, they start talking about the red button scenario. What would you do if the button was presented to you by some bizarre circumstance, and it's sort of on you to do the right thing. And the implication being, if you don't press the button, you're definitely going to sentence people to horror. Horror that they never consented to endure. Horror in the sense that even if they consented to live a life, they didn't deserve the fate they got. They got it much worse than they deserved, so to speak. And the button fixes all that inequity, and the only thing you lose, the only thing sacrificed, is the delusion that the party was worth going to. So there's this idea of a Disneyland. And the simple truth is that Disneyland will cost. You will, in fact, have to run some people over to get there and harm them, paralyze them, cause all kinds of damage. That's just the fact. And does the fact that that's the truth, that it isn't free, and that the price isn't paid voluntarily, doesn't that obligate any rational person to stop it in defense of the victims? And clearly, I think, they get it. They pretend that there's some sort of there's a problem in getting it, but, there really isn't. It really is kind of that simple. That what would the decent person do? And the decent person protects victims, prevents their harm. Okay.
Yeah, of course, but that's something we should take into consideration. But again, this is all relevant to the kind of before people have heard of antinatalism or care about its philosophy. People have, all sorts of people have kind of had that thought of is life worth living? Does the pain outweigh the pleasure? But just bear in mind that this kind of discussion is...
Yeah, Mark Twain, quipped on the subject. So different people have made commentary about the fact that the lucky ones, were never born, or some other kind of statement, sort of demonstrating that, and especially you could argue that as people are more elderly in their existence, they become more aware of the pitfalls, and the fact that much of their trying to, the effort to grab hold of something and hold on to it is a kind of a futile pursuit in life, that you're not really going to win, and if you have even the appearance of your winning, you're not going to be able to finish a winner. And so this is, again, the people arguing pro-life haven't died, so they haven't gone through the process of even the average death, and yet they're talking as if they know it's all right. I can impose it on you because I know it's going to be all right. It's going to be worth it somehow. And they don't have any reason to believe their knowledge is superior to anyone else's knowledge. And they're just overtly saying to people who find that a ludicrous proposition that death is free, that they're just insulting them by saying, I don't care what you think. It's worth it to me.
It's totally irrelevant to the antinatalist position of someone like Benson, because he's like it doesn't matter in the slightest, right? Which if the suffering outweighs the pleasure, it doesn't matter in the slightest if they're idealizing humans, or if they really do live a happy life with more pleasure than pain. If you're going to
so he's saying the asymmetry is an argument against even if life really was a valuable thing for something to experience and something to interact in the universe, and somehow would be a benefit to have Martians, just innately somehow. That the asymmetry argument basically says, well, the positive can't possibly have any meaning because there can't be anybody who needs it, and without the need, there's no value. And I would argue that sort of does, in a way, defeat the asymmetry argument if you were actually to believe there was anything positive to be gained. You would argue that the fact that the people who don't exist aren't aware of it doesn't change the fact that it would have been a positive. So, as if life did actually cure some injury the universe had, like having living things made that injury go away and the suffering that would be experienced go away, that would be a powerful argument in defense of life existing. But it's not anywhere near true, so that's the part that's irrelevant. But I don't think Benatar is really arguing that, but whatever.
You're thinking now, your life was not worth beginning. Right? Now, I've said that a few times now, this kind of like, even if your life is full of pleasure and only a tiny bit of pain, the antinatalist says your life is not worth living. I don't want people to take that as me like...
Okay, so no, I don't see where an antinatalist is saying that, because I'm not even saying that. I'm not saying an individual life can't be worth living. Right now, it's probably worth living if you have intelligence and you're motivated to do something with it. So if you have some sort of idea that you have power through knowledge and that you can mitigate harm in the world, then it's a good thing that you exist, because you might actually be able to do some of that mitigating harm in the world. You might be able to persuade people to change behaviors, or actually go out and attempt to rescue people here and there from harm. So you can be of service to the sentient community living on Earth and be of value. But your value isn't elemental or fundamental to your existence. It's completely dependent on the existence of the harm you're preventing, and that harm didn't need to exist, is the argument.
Degrading the philosophy or insulting it, because the antinatalist isn't going to be like, oh, when you put it like that, they're going to be like, that's just true.
Yeah.
So that's the position, but I think the most powerful argument against the antinatalist position for that reason is the intuitive repulsion that we have to an idea like that. But
so that's the most powerful argument, is intuitive emotion. I'd say that's the weakest of arguments, because the whole point is to be kind of above those little childish biases you might have. We all might have some element of racism and other kinds of things in our physiology, or in the nature of our conditioning. I only like certain kinds of food, and the rest of it does seem quite alien and foreign and useless, and so I have a prejudice. But knowledge of that prejudice is power over it. And so, this idea that, the fact that I had some innate repulsion initially should mean that's when the bell should be going off saying, no, my opinion shouldn't be based on that. It's like when I first heard about the story, Soylent Green, I was like, oh, isn't that awful? They're eating dead people. But then I thought about it, and I said, well, wait a minute. I mean, it'd be awful if they forced you to eat dead people. Okay, that would be awful. Or if you were actually so starving that you actually found it appealing to eat dead people. But the simple truth is they converted dead people into a perfectly functional food item. And they lived in a world where food was a valuable commodity. You know, it was rare. You know, it was hard to get. So of course it would make perfectly good sense if you could convert something dog do into food, you would do it. So why should I find it offensive? So I mean, some people are like that with bugs. They don't want food made out of bugs, but you know, frankly, if they can make it taste as good as a potato chip, I'm all in. And then I realized that, yeah, well, I had this stupid, intuitive, native aversion to the idea, but frankly, after a couple of potato chips, I'm probably going to be easy to convince that, oh, okay, yeah, it doesn't taste like grasshopper, so I mean, as long as it's not wiggling and squirming and guts don't pop out, why not? So anyway, just an argument against what he just said is a powerful argument. The least powerful arguments to people who have experienced some life, they have knowledge of just how they've been corrupt in their perception, just how they've been fooled in the past by intuitional emotions.
How far should we trust our intuitions to reform our moral decisions? It's not an easy question to answer.
Even about loving, you know, it's like you know you can love immaturely or you can love maturely, and understanding that, oh, wait a minute, it's not going to be what you think it is. Okay, yes, she looks like Barbie and everything's clean and da 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 da, but you know, you had a little experience in life, you know that relationships aren't going to be as simple as, you know, they're just not going to be simple. It's going to be much more complicated than what your fantasy is.
Talking of questions that aren't easy to answer, I'm going to have to ask you the big red button question. So knowing everything that you know.
So the big red button question, you know, I feel a little dissed, I have to say, you know, that people are bringing up the red button question like nobody had to plow that road for them, in the sense to be the first ones to introduce it and be called lunatics and, you know, terrorists and all this other stuff. So, but it's, you know, it's, the world turns, yeah, and it rolls over you. So, you know, nothing new there, but it is a little bit, it's a little bizarre to watch, just in the context of, you know, not a single reference, you know.
Now, if there was a big red button in front of you to painlessly destroy all life on Earth, would you press it?
Man. I feel like, you know,
So he's thinking as if he didn't know ahead of time that this subject would come up, which is also bullshit. You know, but you know, but he's just evading. He knows the right answer. He knows there's only one right answer to the question, because yeah, he doesn't want it put on him that he's endorsing torture, and that's all life does, is torture things without them deserving it. He knows that's the system, and there's no way we're going to fix that system.
I'm the wrong person to be in that position for start.
So I'm the wrong person. Like, like there's a right person for it. You know, I mean, it's a dirty job, but somebody has to do it, right? So, I mean, you know, you're the wrong person. Why? Because you have a great deal of devotion to the social contract or something. I mean, the truth is that if you tomorrow could change the world, you would think it'd be a good idea to, you know, keep some of the clearly obvious tension that exists in the world. I mean, if it was your world to make, you'd just sit there and say, well, this makes perfectly good sense, this whole Christian-Muslim war. You know, there wouldn't be some point where you say, let's just draw straws for who stays and who goes, you know, because this is bullshit.
Really, I'm the wrong person. I think that, oh man, yeah, look, I think I might be committed to saying that I have to.
There, that's right. So, you know, he's just thinking, like, it's logically, there's no other choice. The victims will sit there and look at you and saying, that's the best you could do? I'm being tortured, and the best you could do for me is this glib, I'm the wrong person to, you know, have the responsibility to do the right thing. You know, fuck you.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate to you then. I can see why it would be a good way you could argue it's a good thing to do for the planet, for this planet, for the people on this planet and the animals on this planet. But what if there's other sentient life out there somewhere in the universe that are suffering.
So this issue, as if there would be any other option for them than the same one we've decided for ourselves. So, the simple solution would just be, well, before we end our existence, let's build a few replicating robots, that go out into space and, replicate themselves by mining the crap on the surface, build another copy, and just go out into space and seek out anything that looks, a little bit like a shark, and blow it to smithereens. There, so we solve the problem. Because that's the only help they need, is the same help we need. That is, for some better intelligence to understand it's a bad game and nothing decent should ever have to play it.
And maybe one day we can help them. We can reduce their suffering.
Oh, sure.
We're losing.
So I'm just saying, there's no. I don't want to defend this notion that somehow the improbability of a duplicate evolution on some other planet, like I said, what's the odds are it's going to be in some condition that will not be anything like the condition we are in. That is, whether it'll even be in any way complex as a life form, and complex enough to have the sense organs we have, and then to have an electric brain, and then to have a brain that can feel, and it's these levels, these plateaus of evolution are unlikely to be understood to be at all probable to happen, and we haven't even found a biogenesis to be probable. It all seems like very rare chemistry, and you could argue that the fact that certain events only happened once, and there's no evidence of them ever happening a second time, there's no second version of the DNA, there's no second version of a nucleic cell, there's no second version of intelligence built out of some other mechanism besides the neurological, the neuron-based brain, the electrical brain.
Opportunity like pressing the
so
button.
I imagined that pressing the button would be
The multiverse.
good for everybody. But
Okay.
equally, we could also, here's an interesting thought on that, is that
So they changed it to you get to blow up the whole universe, with all the multiverses and everything. So yeah, even better. Great. Yeah, let's blow up your fantasies as long as with the reality. We blow up the real stuff as well as all of the imagined mush.
like, if we take this kind of like, what about the possibility of this? Then we can never do anything ever, like morally speaking, never justify it, because you could never actually know the full effect of the consequences of everything you do. So like, you could say that yeah, it's probably a good idea not to go and mug that person. But I could be like, but what? Like, you don't know that.
Yes, you do know though some things, that they can have very low probabilities, and so I don't know if I'd ever make the absolute statement that no thing can be declared stupid and just overtly stupid. So I could just make the argument that yes, it would be stupid to, if you had a bunch of electrodes into a monkey's brain, and you clearly had the power to just cause it pain, and you weren't doing any experiment, you were just playing with the pain switch for the fun of it. Okay, you could argue that there's no possibility that has a positive outcome.
If you don't mug that person, they might go on to bump into someone on the street, and that person might get a bit angry about that, and then when they go home, they beat their wife because they're in a bad mood. It's yeah, that's true, but when we're doing ethics, we can't consider we have to kind of work on a probabilistic basis here. Is it probably the case that we're going to live long enough?
Right, so that's all we have is reasonable doubts and reasonable beliefs, and so somewhere in that atmosphere, as he concedes, there's making no decision is a decision in the sense that you're not going to be able to fix anything ever, with the approach that every decision is unmakeable. Then nothing gets fixed, you can't do anything that way. You have to take pliers to things. You have to risk breaking it to make it, and it's just a fact.
Contact other species and be able to do anything safe. It's I don't think people understand just how far away we are from anything else on the planet. I mean, to get to the closest star to the sun would take 4 years traveling at the speed of light. It's just unfathomable. Is it a possibility? Maybe even not, actually. Probably not with the amount of time we've got left.
Well, it wouldn't be it'd be a highly improbable that we'd ever do it as biological organisms. We'd do it as probes long before that. So, and yeah, so what would be the point? We can send a probe that's capable of, doing something aggressive. But, for the unlikely probability, it doesn't seem like there's any reason to have a bunch of, nukes on our looking probes.
Before the site expands into a red supergiant. But like, even if it is a possibility, it's like, yeah, but we've got to work probabilistically at this.
Right. And so if the button was to cancel out all life in the whole multiverse, everything's gone, you would press it. I guess how about this for a question? Why shouldn't you press it?
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, I don't think it would be.
Yes, right. So that's again, what are the positive values? And there aren't any. They're just perceptual positives. And so they're just in the form of some sort of, well, I like singing and dancing, or you can say something cruder like, I like screwing the babes, and that's worth it. But why is it worth it? It's only worth it because your brain is in a state that says that somehow it's just an accomplishment. But I mean, if it's looked at, it's kind of a trivial accomplishment for the price of torture. So, if you add up all that we're doing that's in any way essential or beautiful, it's such a tiny percentage of our existence. It's just such a tiny, tiny, tiny percentage that, it would be preposterous to say you would, risk the worst for that best. And that's all the best is gratifying a bunch of crude motivations.
Be a moral depressive.
Are you an antinatalist?
No, because I reject the asymmetry.
So he thinks the asymmetry is antinatalism. Antinatalism is a recognition that the people having babies have no right to be saying to themselves, I know what's best for you. That's that's one tier of antinatalism. How did you get past that one? Where did you get the perception that some human being has the right to play Frankenstein? Right? You'd pass a law against somebody having the right to be Frankenstein, Dr. Frankenstein, right? You wouldn't say that's legal. Why do they have a right to do exactly the same thing, essentially? Okay, they're not digging up a dead corpse and reanimating him, but they're doing the same thing in the sense that they're taking something from some other place and obliging it to be slaves to their personal ego bullshit.
You just think that the planet is net negative in terms of suffering?
Well, this is the interesting thing, because obviously, to be an anti-natalist in the second sense of kind of the balance of pleasure and pain, you can't just take into account the pleasure and pain of like, you've got to take into account the pleasure and pain of the process of kind of introducing this, right? Like, there seems no kind of practicable way to do it without some kind of big red button. That would have to be the way it's done, because any other way would just cause so much suffering that might kind of count.
No, and the simple way to do it is the way it would have been happening if we didn't love immigrants and love poor people. So if we recognize poor people as a blight and a parasite and something to be, kind of almost harshly deterred, okay, don't be poor. It's a really bad thing to be. Especially a messy poor person, one who's arrogant enough to say, I have a right to make an even bigger mess. I'm already a mess, a liability. I'm going to make the liability even. I'm going to double it and triple it and multiply the liability. All right, so now I'm getting political. I'm just saying that clearly the road is just a simple one where you can live out your lives, play your little games, okay, and slowly but surely the human population will decline, and the last people left, are obliged to finish the cleaning.
Again, it's not something I've largely thought. The thing is, it's like,
I mean, theoretically, you only need one last person to hit one last button, and it's over in a millisecond. I mean, it's really not asking much. It's not some gigantic, sacrifice. And that last human can do it when he's 98 years old, Frankly, he doesn't even have to do it. You can just put a pacemaker in him, a little sensor, and as soon as his heart stops, The computer does it. I mean, you can make this insanely benign to anything called the living experience. You can still have all your fun and all kinds of parties and and the system will take care of itself. Your extinction will take care of itself, as it has done for many organisms on Earth. They get isolated. They only exist on an island somewhere, some other thing, and their annihilation is just slow but sure. I think Easter Island, they sort of say, went that way. They became unproductively in their replication, and that was it.
Should you press the button? Like, it's kind of, it goes back to exactly what I was saying earlier, which is like, there is a right answer to that question. Practically, I don't think I can arrive at it. Like, so then there's the other question of, would you, based on everything you know? Like, maybe. Like.
Okay, now he's maybe, and now I'm not sure what the logic says. I'm just saying that I think he does know, he just doesn't like it. And he's saying that there's some reason he should think his not liking it has credibility, when his not liking it just has to do with, well, it sounds like losing, it sounds like giving up, it sounds like being a weak, that's all. It's not a pretty thing to him, this graceful exit. And to me, it's incredibly beautiful. So it's like some people think that somebody who dies, just says, I give up, and they starve to death, or, they're old and they're just done, that they gave up, and they, use these, this derogatory conversation. Somebody commits suicide, they call it an act of violence, and, they come up with all this psychobabble, when, no, it's just a pragmatic, practical recognition that there's nothing to be gained by forcing this square peg to go into the round hole kind of thing.
It's a good argument to say that there are a lot of people who are minded as I am, pleasure and pain, etc., probably minded the same as you as well, who press the button as well. Whether we should, I don't think we can know that.
I don't know. This is where you say, for 1 minute you're saying, well, these people seem reasonable, and then it's just totally unreasonable. You're saying exactly the opposite thing. You're saying that the should thing comes out of the fact that you've added up all that this can possibly be, and you're recognizing it's bleeding, okay, more than it's celebrating, and it's just a fact, and it's sort of epistemic to the function. It's sort of built into the mechanism, and no way to really fix it realistically. I mean, we're robots. We're just regurgitating memes and physiology and redundantly running the same stupid paths over and over again. All the movies, you can see the same formula in every single one. I mean, they're all just the same plays over and over and over again. I mean, The Simpsons was just the Honeymooners, or the Flintstones. It's all the same frickin' formula. Why would you think it's a good idea to just keep doing the same thing over and over again when it's leaking blood?
When I first asked you, you said, I'm not the right person to be doing this. Is the main barrier for you pressing that button a moral uncertainty? You're just not sure, you're scared that you might be wrong.
Yeah, I think it must be. But again...
It must be. So you can't imagine exactly what it would be, right? There's no way he could articulate what this magical function is that we're going to do besides singing some song. So we're going to sing some song that's so beautiful that, oh yeah, it's worth torture. Torture something for it. Come on.
The same thing can apply to what we're talking about in our other discussion about, like, we have an uncertainty about whether...
Do we really have all these uncertainties? I mean, I don't, what are you basing the uncertainty on? I mean, the certainty of evolution is quite clear. You're not uncertain about that, are you really? You really think there's any extraordinary or supernatural intervention in the process? And what does it do? It makes a bunch of copies, children, and evolution kills most of them brutally. I mean, it's a psycho killer in every way except motivation. I mean, in every way it's just as covered in blood. The victims are just as horribly tortured. In every way, it's functionally exactly the same, except it doesn't have some desire to torture. That's it. But other than that, it looks exactly like a psycho killer. And you're saying, I don't know. Maybe it's Gandhi. Gandhi was sort of a psycho killer. Turns out.
Feeding in the natural world might make things worse, right? But that moral uncertainty shouldn't stop us from doing it. Right. But I think maybe it's a different level of moral uncertainty. Or even
so I don't know. So all this moral uncertainty. I guess if it was your kid to be tortured, then all of a sudden people aren't so uncertain, right? So when it's really happening to something they care about or themselves, well, then they're not so morally uncertain, I don't think. Yeah.
Kind of moral uncertainty. But then again, it might also just be my kind of bias, my status quo bias, and my bias towards like life being anything that does exist, and the pleasures that I've experienced and the pains that I've ignored. But that's just an analysis of my psychology. That's not an analysis of any kind of moral principle.
Right. So you're conceding you're just not doing anything called reasoned philosophy. You're just doing some mushy emotional crap about how, I still want to screw some bitches and this antinatalism stuff, pressing red buttons gets in my way, or some kind of bullshit. I mean, you're not making a reasoned argument why, first, that life is truly producing any real good, and that somehow all of the bad can be mitigated by whatever this good is, especially when most of the bad happens to organisms that never asked to participate in this game of you lose. Here's the short straw, it's in your pocket, So how can you have any doubt? It's ethically wrong, and it is just as any kind of crude measuring of its function. It's a violation of logic to think, would you make it? Would you create such a system and be proud of it? Oh, come on. If you made it, wouldn't you want to erase it? If you knew its creation, you did it. You made it in your room. You built it. Would you have any doubt that you should... Oh, geez, I should unbuild that as fast as I can. It's so fucking stupid. What do you think is going to be the higher justification that we don't have already perfect knowledge of? We already have complete knowledge of the fact that we're just psychological basket cases, in a perpetual chase of some some justification, some I win status. What else is there? What else are you chasing in your life?
The question of what I would do rather than what I should do, which I think is the more interesting question, or at least the question that I would be kind of confident talking about.
So you wouldn't do what you think you should do, is that what you're telling me? So I'm just saying that's the first crime of any kind of fallacy or something, is to think that you should ever do what you think you shouldn't do, or the shoulds are coming from the higher brain. Those are the ones that should be listened to, not the impulsive I feel like things. So you're failing right there. You're basically saying that, okay, logically it's a should, but somehow there's a shouldn't in my brain based on culture or some kind of bullshit.
Because that's my field. I do philosophy. I feel like my own psychology as pertains to these things is a whole other question. But it's quite a damning one and a scary one. I don't know. Would you press the button?
I mean, I have absolutely no will to be tortured. I have no desire to be tortured. I'm not at all masochistic in any way. I'd be scared to death to be tortured. But yes, if they came to me with the deal, you get tortured and it saves 1 million people from cancer or something, I know I got to do it. I know I can't logically escape it. I don't like it. I'm not going to go, oh, this is so cool, I get to be a hero. No, I'm gonna hate every fucking minute of it. I might even cry, whine like a little bitch. Why me? But yeah, I'd sign, okay? Because there's no alternative rationally. I can't justify any other decision. So just concede. Okay, you're too much of a coward to stand up and say, yes, I'll defend the unnecessarily tortured. I'm going to be their defense. I'm going to protect them and defend them because they're being raped and brutalized for no good reason. Absolutely zero good reason.
I think I would.
It feels like a kind of unfortunate commitment, right? It feels like you've backed yourself into a corner with some more philosophy. It's like, obviously, the reason it's not a problem is because there'll never be a situation in which that button really exists.
Right. Yeah.
So here they just turn it into something. Well, there's no reason to. Sure, there's a reason to believe. Why is it outside of the realm of reasonable to believe? Again, we've never even tested our capacity to blow planets up. I mean, nuclear bombs can in fact be made bigger and bigger and bigger. There's no rule against it, theoretically. So this is just a bullshit argument that it's not within our means. Of course it is. And the very fact that this conversation is happening, and the very fact that many people have in subtle ways accepted some of the tenets of this argument, in the sense that they've recognized that, replicating is consequential. It's a significant act. They have to be prepared for the responsibility. They're gaining all that kind of knowledge. They're not just doing it because everybody else is doing it anymore. They're thinking about it first. I mean, that's the road up the right staircase. Now, yeah, they're walking up that staircase fucking slow as hell, but they are walking up the staircase. You can have a more intelligent conversation now than you could 500 years ago, and that's the truth.
Even if you take, you say, what about the nuclear warheads? It's like, that's not painless, believe me. And if you're talking about a button that painlessly kills people, it's like, that won't exist. It's kind of like, look, with any effort...
A nuclear bomb painlessly kills, okay? I mean, unless you're on the periphery or something. Obviously, we wouldn't leave things on the periphery. So if you do it right, it's going to be damn quick. Same as painlessly. I mean, you can go out and do it painlessly now. It's not that hard to make something passively unconscious. I've been in hospital. They've done it. They stick you with a needle and you're in Loopyville. And, just couldn't matter what the hell they do.
Theory. You end up with some kind of repugnant conclusion, right? Like any ethical theory you choose will lead to some kind of unintuitive truth. And the reason that those aren't a problem, the reason they shouldn't discount the theory, is because they're so contrived that they're not going to come about. It's like...
Okay, so again, he's arguing as if it's not going to come about, and we are so, like I said, right now we would be in this conversation would be so much realer, okay, if the third world wasn't replicating at an insane rate and forcing smart people to look stupid, in the sense that idiocracy is winning. Okay, the dumb people are replicating. They're filling the rational void with irrational excess.
You can imagine the Kantian response to somebody saying, because the idea is you shouldn't tell a lie even to somebody who comes to the door who wants to murder someone. You should tell them, they're in there, because you shouldn't lie. Because if you do lie and they turn away and your friend has snuck out the window and run around the corner and they get killed for it, that's your fault. Then it's the Kantian could just be but that's so contrived.
Yes, there's no one formula, and all you have is probabilities. So again, you have to go with the probabilities. That's all you got. And so in some circumstances, the probability is going to be high that if you tell the truth, the outcome's going to be worse than if you lie. So in those circumstances, you're allowed to lie. You're not allowed to lie for personal gain or for personal profit. That kind of argument can be made. But for necessity, yeah, you are. Well, even for personal gain, to prevent somebody from killing you, it's it's okay if you lie if they're going to kill you.
Or what I mean? It wouldn't necessarily be a problem. For the utilitarian, when someone says, but what if we had a utility monster? It's I guess maybe I am convinced with you that would be the right thing to do, to just allow some thing that had a higher capacity for experiencing pleasure to suck all of the pleasure out of everybody else. But that's just not the world we're in, so we don't need to worry about it, even though it's an uncomfortable conclusion. It might be true, but in the same sense, a painless burden of killing everybody on the planet might be a permissible thing to do, a moral thing to do, but that might just be one of these.
All right, so he's just equivocating. So he seemed in the beginning to say, yes, I'd have to do it. Now he's just saying it's not a real question, and I'm uncertain. Just mush. So it turned to mush.
Kind of repugnant conclusions, that's only a problem when it becomes a possibility, and it never will be a possibility.
Well, let's go away from the big red button question and think more fact.
So again, this idea that there'll never be a possibility is just such a denial of the fact that, well, what do you think we're going to evolve to be? What do you think intelligence is going to look like? You think it's going to look like Bill and Ted's whatever the hell it was adventure? You think we're just going to get dumber and dumber? Is that your conclusion? The argument is smart people are finding life troublesome. Okay, that's just the truth. They're asking themselves questions about their existence and recognizing how difficult it is to live a life without stepping on something. These are all parts that they're recognizing, and all you have to do is be able to imagine that, well, yes, in the future there's going to be more of those people, more people who are educated than people stupid enough to believe in God fables and fantasies about how, death and destruction is part of the fun. Deserve having nothing to do with it is great.
About the conclusion of antinatalism. I mean, do you think that people will ever be equipped to take on this message?
It's interesting, isn't it? Because obviously antinatalism is a very, very fringe philosophy, and a very scary one. It's a very laughable one for many people.
And again, laughable. Why? Because they're glib and insensitive. That's the only rationale. Just like veganism or anything else, for most people, is not a rational conversation because they have irrationally declared sentient feeling organisms as food, as nothing. They've done exactly what aliens could do to them, and they would articulate their plea for, no, I'm not worthless, no, I'm not meaningless, my experiences count. You can't torture me and torment me and pretend it doesn't mean anything. I mean, we'd certainly make the argument, and because the animals on this planet can't make the argument, therefore that's their only right. That's what they're basing their right on, is the fact that the animals haven't raised their hand and say, stop. Stop.
And maybe it deserves to be maybe there's a reason for that, but it's so was veganism, so was anti-racism, so was so was women's suffrage. It's I think that.
Okay, so he's put a whole bunch of stuff into one category. Clearly, we're going backwards on some of those subjects, I would argue, because there's people who think, who are so defensive of the, so aggressive in persecuting past crimes, that they think the victims are harmless. And when you give the victims power, they become just as dangerous as the perpetrators. So, that doesn't work. What you're trying to do is restore fairness.
If it is right, then the power of the argument should carry it through to one day becoming somewhat normalized.
Right, so duh. So yes, so your previous statement was kind of just nonsense, right? Because you think that intelligent organisms will find some way to... it's like Dawkins, okay? When I think these guys, I think they had a conversation with the animals rights guy, who I don't care for too much, because he's just too pro-life. But he did change his tone about 2 years ago or 3 years ago. He sort of became antinatalist, so I'll take that back. But anyway, him and Dawkins had a conversation once, and Dawkins seemed so clueless on oh, you mean animals feel? It's like he didn't even make any kind of logical connection, that the only thing they are is mute. They just mute. They can't express themselves, but you can understand logically that they don't need vocabulary. They don't need to speak your language to understand what they're feeling. It's just silly to assume they can't feel. It's silly. So you think the future is going to be full of silly humans who don't think animals feel?
Yeah, maybe.
But then how would you implement policies?
Well, I think that's a question for a future generation, but it's I can imagine if you...
Jeez, you're just a cop-outer all over the place, aren't you? No, it's right now is the time to start doing it. Now. The future will do it. That's the typical cop-out. Nobody wants to fix anything now. They just keep pretending, well, the future will fix it.
got people on board? Like, because in order for it to be a situation where people thought it should be put into law, there must be a moral consensus in the community, which means that people...
So that's a lie, right? I mean, you don't need a moral consensus. All you need is a mob, okay? So mobs get paid attention to. So if you have a few million people, you control a few million votes, you will be able to force your agenda on the majority. Just a fact. That's how the politics works. It's a little bit dirty, but it's the facts.
Would probably be self-regulating to a sufficient extent anyway. I don't know, it really depends.
Self-regulating? What does that mean? There's no self-regulating. Again, the progressive road is that, again, you can't imagine us being anything else but an idiocracy if 1,000 years from now there's still Muslims and Christians. I mean, you'd have to say that's a huge failure.
On what the society's like at the time. Like, if you've got a society that's mostly pro-antinatalist, it wouldn't be too difficult, right? If you've got a society where people still want to have children, like how are you in your policy?
Again, this is not about what they want. It's about making the argument that what you want doesn't have anything to do with it. The argument is do you have the competency to say something like, I know what's best for you? Do you have a right to say those words as you commit this act of creation? I know what's in your interest. This is in your interest. Do they have any right to think they know that? And once you ask that question, the conversation is kind of over, because I think every human being doesn't want some Nazi telling them, I know what's best for you.
Well, you probably wouldn't be able to. No one would be doing it. So like, it really depends on the specificities. But I think whether or not it becomes popular philosophy will depend on two things. Firstly, the power of the argument and whether it's true. But secondly, whether or not people take it seriously and give it the kind of day.
Yeah, the time of day you've given it, right? It's good. They're going to have to do a little better than this mush. It's a clear philosophical argument you had to deal with, and what did you do? You equivocated. You pretended there's some other complex truth here that you don't have any certainty about. I can't write a should, because somehow there's some complex nuance here that I can't account for. You know that's not true. You know it probably is exactly what it looks like, which is a torture chamber. It's a meat grinder. Everything gets ground up, and some of the ones that are dancing and saying, I'm winning, they're just dancing on top of the meat grinder. Again, you're not hearing the testimony from the dead, okay, who've had some perspective, who've done it all, so to speak, because maybe they would explain, okay, there's some good shit in life, but I sure fucked it up. I don't think most people go to their grave thinking, well, I did such a swell job, I did everything just right. I don't think that happens too often. Lots of regrets.
If all of the people criticizing antinatalism are doing so at a very surface level, having not read Dennis's book, having not...
Right, well, it's very trivial. Not read Darwin's book, frankly. Not read any book, except, well, not even the Bible. They're illiterate. Yeah, that's it.
Engage with antinatalists properly, not taking them seriously, then people who are kind of thinking about it will look at the antinatalist position, this like well thought out, well constructed philosophical syllogism, and they'll look at the response, people going, come on, that's ridiculous. Oh, what, you're going to go kill yourself now? And they're going to be like, okay, well, I know which one makes more sense to me. So, like, listen, if you're anti-antinatalist, if you're pro-natal, then the best thing you can be doing is probably taking it seriously. Because, it's gaining some traction. A lot of people, since I've started talking about veganism on my channel, because people recognise the pleasure and pain and how it's all related, I'm getting more requests. It seems unrelated, but people are like, hey, do antinatalism next. It's like, a lot of people want to hear what I say about it, because it seems kind of connected. It's like...
Yeah, and unfortunately, you didn't have anything to say, that was, connected to the facts that are plainly visible. If you're an evolutionist, what does it mean? Do you really think, in human evolution, there's some spark moment where we became real conscious, and our ancestor before that was not real conscious? There's no argument to be made.
Picking up steam, if not as a philosophy that people are actually kind of throwing their weight behind, one that people are becoming aware of and realise it's a bit troubling. They're like, hold on, yeah, this is all great, but doesn't this kind of lead to this?
Yeah.
It's like two options here. We either say, don't be ridiculous, come on man, now you're just exaggerating, or you say, that's a very serious concern. And here's why I don't think that antinatalism works, because I reject the argument from asymmetry. Right. And I think that the second is going to be far more effective.
Yeah, well, whatever. There's lots of effective ways to argue it, and you can argue it through their own nonsense. I mean, there's all these people who are racists, and all this other stuff, and they can see the truth that the world's changing, and what a human being is going to be in the future is going to be very different than the human beings that exist here now, and they could almost recognize for that reason alone, what's my investment? I mean, if we did have a spaceship that was going to fly through the galaxy, right, and only 2 people could be in the spaceship, can you imagine the war that would take place over what race they're going to be, and then how people willingness to invest in their voyage into space to populate the universe with human beings? Can you just imagine how how the financing would be completely dependent on what those 2 people look like? So I mean, this is all just so easy to point out the duplicitously trivial bullshit that people live for in terms of supporting things that are completely without value. There's people who defend lotteries. What rational person would defend as the system is so fucking stupid? Again, deserve has nothing to do with it. Systems. Even the whole defense of sports as an entertainment. The preposterous waste of resources on a silly competition. I mean, a competition has no fucking value at all. Just nothing. Hitting balls over fences, through hoops, seeing how high you can jump. I mean, they're inanely stupid human behaviors. And this is what we're encouraging millions of children to try to be. The best hoop thing person. It's so bad. So insipidly stupid. If it was their game, if they were the one responsible for making it, they'd have to be embarrassed that that's the best they could come up with. Oh, we have a world full of all these kind of problems. We know that intelligence is a really great problem solver. It makes blue LEDs and all kinds of good stuff. But instead of having a reward and punishment system that really rewards them with $1 million and all kinds of great shit and chicks and the whole thing, no, let's have a system where they get almost nothing for doing that intelligent thing. And we'll spend billions encouraging kids to throw balls through hoops. That's the game you create. That's the world you make. And you can come up with a rational excuse how that's a good game you made? That makes any kind of sense at all? That's called civilization? I mean, it's so bad. It's so easy to mock. It's just so bad. A piece of art, or whatever you want to call it. It's so grotesquely stupid. How could anybody be proud? That's the game I invented. Ugh.
But again, it's a recent line of thought for me. A lot of people want to know what I think about it, and I've said to them, listen, I'll make a video talking about it, as we do now. I'll talk about it, and I'll let people publicly hear it. But you should be aware, this is just something that I've only just started researching. I've only just started reading about it. It's open for debate, but I'm one of those people who is willing to take it seriously. Of course I'm willing to take it seriously. Anybody who claims to have a way to minimize unnecessary suffering.
But again, I don't even know how you're taking it seriously when, how can you make it so complicated? I mean, I'm just saying, how can you be somebody who's an atheist, who believes in evolution, and now has understood the vegan argument? How, with those 3 pegs already recognized, you must also know there's no free will, that we're just robots, just victims of our maturation, the circumstances of our environment. How can you pretend that you think, oh, there's some redeeming feature? I just can't see it, but it's there. I know it. I feel it in my heart. It's a bug planet, okay? And we're bugs who can wear sweaters, and we cut our hair, and we do different things to look unbuggy, and we have vocabulary, and we can sing and dance. We're still maggots. This is a game played by maggots, okay? And we can pretend, well, we're not really maggots. You're maggots. Do you have a counter-argument of some kind? There's no counter-argument, right? I mean, you're just program machines. You just eat and shit. And you cannibalize other feeling organisms to do it. You breathe, okay, the biomass made out of their blood and bones.
From the time of day, right? And if they've put their argument in a concise way that actually makes sense and has some kind of persuasive power, then damn right it's worth engaging with, even if just to reject it. So it kind of tires me out when people aren't even willing to engage with it. No, but it's fine if you don't have time, if you're not interested, if that's not what you want to do. But people who are like, I'm not going to engage with that because it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I'm just saying, who's doing that though? They're engaging it, and they'll make some kind of preposterous frickin' argument like, "Buck up, sissy." So something that doesn't mean anything. They won't fix the problem of the horrible deaths that take place every day, for no good reason except for people's praying to their religious totems. Okay, so it's this massive amount of human suffering that takes place, forcing people to live longer than they want to or need to, and only because they have to do it as a token to their God. They think their God's going to feel like they didn't do their job if they don't sacrifice somebody else's welfare to their God. Somebody else's interest and somebody else's, the capital of their existence is going to be squandered by these assholes who are going to use them, as blood sacrifices on the altar of their gods. That's taking place right now. And you have some defense of humanity? There's no defense.
I just don't think that they've paid enough attention.
Sure. And I think that's a pretty good place to end it, actually.
Okay, so I'm not going to pretend like this is natural. We originally, of course, filmed the outro on the assumption that this was going to Jack's channel, but Jack, thanks for having this discussion. I mean, it's been fun. When I came here, I didn't expect to be talking about antinatalism, and I think it's fun. Because, as I say, a lot of people have been requesting it. Now, anybody who's watching this, not only go and watch the video that we did talking about wild animal suffering and veganism on Jack's channel, but also go and subscribe. Jack is someone who, in the side of
So again, the whole argument about veganism, okay, is just such a narrowly small argument. Like somehow only the animals we eat for food are tortured. No, again, if you understand evolution, then you understand evolution is doing a lot worse than we're doing. I mean, we have some personal interest in keeping our slaves alive. Evolution has exactly the opposite interest. It has every interest in most of them dying young and quickly and brutally in terms of being failures. And it doesn't have any interest in all of them succeeding. Yeah, no interest at all, because that will fail the evolution test. So, generally speaking, you just got to call it a fail, I guess. I mean, I had a better impression the first time around, because it did get they did deflate the balloon, towards the end.
A lot of vegan YouTubers will be on the streets challenging people, and some of the questions that he poses to you in the street, I think, are particularly powerful. So go and check it out. But yeah, Jack, thanks for having this discussion.
Thank you for the conversation. It's been great. Thank you.
Blah 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 blah. So, gobbledygook. Yeah, just say something. Yes, it's good. He talked about it, but he just injected a bunch of vacillation rhetoric about how there's some reason to be uncertain, to think that, oh no, the victims are just deluded fools for not thinking we're doing a great job, the rest of us. The special people who are winning, they're doing such a fantastic job and they're winning, that us losers have no right to complain because the winners are so spectacular. How can we not want to be fodder for their, celebrity, makeout dance thing? It's just pathetic. So, enough of a video and such, I think.